Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. Go get 'em, guys.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast in association, as always, with Andy's Man Club. Lads, remember, it's okay to talk. This episode, bonus episode. It's like the third one this week. We are 66% British, 33% Irish, but as always, 100% Giants. In this bonus episode, we have a big one. Draft expert, ESPN's own Jordan Reid is joining us for a quick fire 15-minute chat any minute now. Boys, how are we doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Like I say, third episode this week. I'm not going to mention any names, but I know some guys on here are getting questions about being on the internet talking to other men. But yeah, absolutely buzzing to get Jordan on. Me and Kev have been massive fans of Jordan going back to his pre-ESPN days when he was on the Draft Network, and we value all the time we get of him. For me, he's up there in like probably the top 2, top 3 draft analysts that you can speak to. So for the people that are listening to this, buckling should be in for a good one.
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait to chat to him and sort of pick his brains on a few soft questions, a few hard questions. We'll see what we can get him to answer. But again, it's one of those Jordan Reid, ESPN draft analyst. Like he's one of the big ones in the sense that he's one of the top boys for the ESPN draft stuff. And this is such a busy time of year, so it's so good that we were able to get him on, and just look forward to hearing what he has to say about this draft and the Giants.
So, for those of you who don't know who Jordan is, and if you're following the NFL and following the draft, you really should do. But Jordan played quarterback between 2010 and 2013 at North Carolina Central University before moving into coaching between 2014 and 2018. Helping the team win 3 MEAC titles. After that, he worked as a writer and a scout for the Draft Network before, as we've already said, joining ESPN in 2021. Let's not keep this from you any longer. Here is Jordan Reid. So here is the main man himself, Jordan Reid. Jordan, how you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm good. Thank you guys for having me. It's always a pleasure.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Hope your day's been well. We're going to crack straight on with this because we're obviously conscious of your precious time. So, Shane, do you want to kick us off, mate?
Yeah, sure. Like Craig says, thanks for coming on, Jordan. Really, really happy to have you on, and we're going to get straight into it. So, I just want to start. In the past, a lot of our listeners have kind of asked us about how we scout players and watch tape, etc. Can you just give a brief description on your method in regards to watching college players and sort of getting your draft profiles for them going?
Well, man, I don't even know where to start. It is a long and tedious job. It's something that I love to do. So I actually coached in college for 8 years, but my last 2, I was what's called a recruiting coordinator. So basically, I was scouting and putting teams together. And that's really where I found my love for not only recruiting players, but just figuring out the background of players, who they were with their helmets on, but also their helmets off, which is something that I still do to this day. But as far as my process with the draft, I usually start in June. That's when everything starts for me. The month of May is kind of vacation, reset the battery, and then charge it back up for what's called an 11-month job in a sense. So June is really where I get my list of potential draft eligible players, and then also players that could make what I call the leap going into the season of where they eventually declare for the draft coming out the following January, those months leading up to the draft. And it's a huge list, thousands and thousands of players. So what happens then is I nail it down of usually the top 500 to 600 guys or so. And then I split it up by position and I just start watching tape on all those players and jotting down notes. I'm still a handwritten notes guy, so I have notebooks and notebooks of players, just a huge list of players throughout the year that I'm watching. And then during the fall, I actually go out to games and live scout. So I'm seeing these players in person, getting a feel for them. What is their workout regimen? How do they adjust when they make mistakes in games? How are they on the sideline? Stuff that we don't normally get to see on TV. And I tell everybody this: scouting players is kind of like buying a car, right? You can see a car, it looks great online. You can see the pictures of the interior, you can see the exterior, but when you're going to those games, that's really where you're test driving the car. And what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of the car? What don't I like? What do I like? Is the engine bad? Is there certain bad parts of the car? So it's really like really essentially investing in a car when I'm scouting these players throughout the season. And then once January gets here and February gets here, that's where we really get into the fun part of the process, where we're getting into the combine, the pro days, and then leading up to the draft in April.
Yeah, I love that analogy. Comparing it to buying a car, it's fantastic. I know you've been on the road quite a lot recently, attending various players' pro days, etc. Could you just give an insight into what happens at a pro day from your perspective, as opposed to what it might be for a team, and kind of what things you're looking at for in particular? And then also, just a side one on that is, has there been any standout pro days this year for yourself?
It's mainly just testing with pro days. You're seeing guys that didn't do certain things at the combine, and they're filling in those gaps of what they didn't do. So let's say they didn't do a vertical or a 3-cone or a short shuttle at the combine. The pro day is really an opportunity for them to impress scouts and evaluators that are there. And it's more comfortable for guys too, just because you're in the facility that you go to every day, that you practice in, and do things leading up to games throughout the year, and that you've been training in as well. So that's why a lot of guys really omit or skip to do some stuff at the combine, just because they're more comfortable in the elements or the confines of their facility at their school or their university. So you're looking into filling in those gaps of those testing numbers, but also they work out at those pro days too. For example, receivers run routes or quarterback throws um, at the pro day. So really, once again, it's like seeing that car up close. You're test driving that car. It looks a little bit different as far as when it's hitting your eye. For quarterbacks, you get to see how much velocity that they actually have on the ball when they throw a bad pass. How are they responding? How does that next pass look? Do they tank it after throwing 3 or 4 bad balls in a row, or do they adjust and they end up overcoming some of those bad balls that they do throw? So that's kind of the insights behind a pro day. It's really testing and then just seeing some of those guys that worked out. But I mean, the LSU pro day blew me away. Seeing Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. up close, both of those guys really blew me away as far as players that really stood out the most.
Cool. I mean, there's a lot of chatter about quarterbacks, obviously, because there just seems to be such a strong class. Do you think this is the best QB class in recent years?
Yeah, I think it's really, really good, especially at the top. I think we're probably going to get 4 guys that go in the first round, with Caleb Williams of USC, obviously Jaden Daniels of LSU, Drake May of North Carolina, and then JJ McCarthy of Michigan. I think, or I should say, I feel good about all 4 of those guys going somewhere in the first round. And then after that, it gets really dicey, just because there's some variables attached to some other guys that are a little bit older. Speaking of Bo Nix of Oregon, then also Michael Penix Jr. of Washington. But right now, I feel good about 4 guys potentially going inside the first round.
And then obviously you touched there on Penix and Nix. How close to the first round do you think they're gonna come? Do you think it's going to be a potentially a trade up option for somebody towards the latter stages?
It's kind of TBD, but I tell everybody it's to be decided. About 22 days from now, we won't really know, and it really just depends on who you ask. Sources that I talk to, coaches that I talk to, people in the league that I talk to, opinions are all over the place about all of those guys, and that's what makes the draft fun. There's 32 different draft boards. There's going to be 32 different opinions on people that you ask. There's some people that like Knicks inside the first round, while there's some other people that value them more so on day 2, and then you get the same evaluation and opinions on Penix as well. There's some people that feel comfortable with him somewhere inside of the first round, while there's others that worry about the durability and then also some of the accuracy concerns as far as the mobility with him too, and they feel more comfortable on day 2. So once again, just depends on who you ask. There's so many different opinions about both of those players.
So if we have a look at someone like Drake May, you've got at your QB2. How close is that battle with Jaden Daniels in your opinion?
So you're splitting hairs with both of those players. I have Drake as my third ranked overall player, and then I have Jaden as my number 5 overall player. So once again, we're splitting hairs with both of those players. But once again, I mean, without question, Jaden Daniels was the better player overall from just a performance standpoint. But we're not grading players for how they are in the now. We're grading players for how they are long term. I think long term, Drake May is going to be the better overall player. I just think he has more upside. And then the elements and the surroundings that he was in last year, it just was not very favorable for him. And I think Drake is going to be the better player overall.
So if you talk about like projections, that's where obviously JJ's kind of really shot up
Yeah.
draft boards because of projections. Is he being overhyped?
That's a good question. Once again, it just depends on where he ends up going. The top 5 is a little bit rich for me with JJ. I think I have him as my 30th ranked player right now. So I see him more so as a late day 1, early day 2 guy. But once again, and I tell everybody this when talking about JJ, you have to project for what he's going to be in the future. You're not just looking at what he is right now. And the sample size is very small with JJ just because he wasn't allowed to throw the ball. And you have to think of it from Michigan's standpoint. If I have a recipe for success that's working, why would I change that recipe? And also they had an interim head coach for 3 games. So from a head coach standpoint, I'm going to run the football and try to get out of games with a W. It doesn't matter if I win 2 or 3-0 or if I win 49-50. I'm just trying to get out of that game with a W. So I think that's what happened with JJ. And I point to the Penn State game a lot with him just because everybody talks about how he only attempted 1 pass in the second half. But if you're running the ball consistently down the throat of the opposition, I'm going to keep doing that, even if I quote unquote don't trust my quarterback. I think they trusted JJ. I just think they had a recipe or a formula for success that was working. So they continued with that. But once again, with JJ, and I use this phrase all the time, the NFL coaches love the thrill of the unknown. I call it the thrill of the unknown just because they always feel as if they have the recipe for success to unlock or uncover that next stage of the development for quarterbacks. We saw it with Trey Lance a couple of years ago. We've seen it with plenty of quarterbacks in years past. No matter what the sample size is, if they're young and they showed flashes of high-end play, NFL coaches are going to love that just because they feel as if they have the recipe for success to uncover that next stage of their development. And with JJ, just turned 21 years old in January. And then he's very efficient on third down and those gotta have it moments. And then also he's a winner. He's been 27. He went 27-1 in his career, but the sample size is very small with him. But once again, NFL coaches are going to love what I call the thrill of the unknown with JJ.
Cool. Kev, a couple of general draft questions for Jordan.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, so glad to have you on, Jordan. Me and Sheehan's been following your work since the Draft Network days, and obviously since you moved over to ESPN and stuff. So they're really, really chuffed to have you on. And so yeah, it's just more of a general sort of like feeling for this draft. So, in your opinion, I just want to know what you think is the strongest or deepest sort of group, position group in this year's draft.
I think it's 2 positions. We talked about quarterback already, but 2 others is wide receiver and then also offensive tackle. I think those are clearly your 2 best positions in this draft. And we could see as many as 6 or 7 in the first round from both positions, which is an astronomically high number. I believe in 2008, we had 7 offensive tackles drafted, which is still a record for the NFL draft. So it wouldn't be surprising if this year's group ties or even exceeds that number. This is just a really, really good offensive tackle class. And then with wide receivers, we've seen over the past 4 or 5 years or so, we've consistently gotten really good wide receiver classes, and this is just the next group that is up.
Yeah, fantastic. I know the Giants fans will be enjoying listening to that because we are definitely after that number 1 wide receiver. But so on the flip side of that, then what do you think is sort of the weakest or thinnest position group?
Linebacker, I definitely think is one of the weaker groups, and then also running back. We were spoiled last year with Jahmyr Gibbs and then also Bijan Robinson. There really isn't that type of player or that high-end talent in this draft class. I don't even think we're going to get one inside of the top 50, honestly. And this group is really reminiscent of what we saw in 2014. So in 2014, there was no running back selected in the top 50, but we saw 7 go inside the top 100. So I think that's going to be very similar of what happens with this group, of where every single NFL team is probably going to be waiting around on day 2 to see when the first or second running back is taken. And then here comes the run on those running backs inside the top 100. I think that's what's going to happen with this year's group.
Yeah, you'll find some teams don't want to be the first to pull the trigger on the running back.
Yeah.
But once that goes, then you better start picking
Yep.
them up then. So just a couple of players who you would be sort of like higher on than the consensus, and a couple of players that you might be a bit lower on than the consensus.
A couple players that I like quite a bit is Jordan Newton of Illinois. He's a defensive tackle. I'm a big fan of him, and he's kind of slipped down boards a little bit here lately, just because it's been so long since we've seen him. He had the Jones fracture back in. He had the surgery back in January, I should say. So we weren't able to see him at the combine. He didn't have any postseason All-Star games or anything like that. So we haven't seen him since the season finale in Illinois, where he was just phenomenal throughout the season last year. And what I love about Newton is that those guys had so many players drafted a year ago now, with Devin Weatherspoon, who ended up being a top 5 pick, Sidney Brown, who ended up having a successful rookie season with the Eagles, Jatavius Martin, I should say, with the Commanders, who went on to have some productive games as well for them. Johnny Newton was the one player that was withstanding or came back from that defense, and he was clearly the star player, and he still produced. So Jordan Newton definitely is one that I like quite a bit. A player that I'm a little bit lower on than consensus is Tyler Guyton of Oklahoma. I just think the tools are there, but man, there's so many glaring weaknesses with him as far as the hand usage. The balance is very questionable with him, and then just consistency throughout the season. I kind of struggled with him in that manner. And I know some people say he could go inside the top 20, but I see him more so as a back end of the first round, top end of the second round type of player.
He's one of those players that's got all the measurables, though, that teams will look out for.
Yeah, he has all of those. I mean, he looks great in person. I saw him at the Senior Bowl, but just the consistency with him is what I struggle with. I think Craig's on mute.
Yeah.
Rookie mistake.
There we go.
There we go. Thanks. Well, thanks for coming on, Jordan. Just like one last thing before we let you go. The Giants have a glaring need with Daniel Jones's contract, and we have no idea where we're going to go at 6. Do you think quarterback is a realistic proposition for the Giants in this draft? And from what you're hearing, is it steering that way, or is it smokescreen?
I thought I was going to get out of here without you guys asking me if they go quarterback at 6. I know you were saving the best for last. No, I'm kidding. It's really, really interesting, guys, just because with Daniel Jones, everybody knows that they're going to try to get out of the contract next year. They're just going to take the dead cap hit. So do you take a quarterback now and try to develop them, or do you wait until next season? But the tricky part for Joe Shannon and also Brian Daboll is that, are they going to be able to see it through next year if they don't win games this year? So if I had to guess, I still think they go wide receiver and they wait until the draft next year. But once again, this revolves on how highly they feel about Drake May, JJ McCarthy, or Jaden Daniels, whoever is there, or if any of them are there for number 6 overall. But if I had to guess, I think they go wide receiver, whether it's Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors, and just ride it out with Daniel Jones and then Drew Lock, who they just signed in the offseason, just to see what could happen there with either one of those guys. And I know that's going to make you guys' ears bleed, just because Daniel Jones was not very good last year. And then Drew Lock, we both know he's not a long-term starter. But I think the better approach for them would be to just go ahead and get the high-end wide receiver, try to convince the Mariners to allow them to see it through one more season, and then just take a shot on the quarterback after this season.
Cool. Shane, was there something you wanted to add just quickly?
Yeah, just one very quick one for Jordan before he shoots off. Not putting you on the spot, but where would you have ranked Daniel Jones in this quarterback draft class?
I was not a Daniel Jones guy when he was coming out of Duke. I had him, I believe, as a second-round player when he was coming out. I just wasn't a big fan of him coming out. And I know he carried Duke when he was there, but some of the glaring weaknesses that we saw from him at Duke, they're still showing up to this day. And then also you have to factor in the lack of durability that he has shown over his career as well. It's really carried over. And he's exactly what I thought he would be when he was coming out of Duke.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Jordan. We really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to chat with 3 guys from the UK who are obviously are very Giants-centric, and we appreciate you answering the Daniel Jones question too.
No problem. Thank you, guys, as always. Always a pleasure.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Right. There we have it. Thank you, Jordan, for giving us your time. We know that it is definitely a busy one for you, and we look forward to finding out what happens in, just over 20 days time from now. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have for this bonus episode. But stay tuned to the channel, as next week we'll be going for the first mock draft of the offseason. And obviously Saturday we have another interview with another Jordan DeLugo this time. Boys, how did you find that?
Yeah, it's amazing. 15 minutes just wasn't long enough. I could have spoke, draft stuff with Jordan for hours on end, in all honesty. But hopefully the listeners enjoyed it just as much as we did. And like what we said on previous episodes, the draft content is ramping up. I'm hoping it might get better than this, but there's no promises because Jordan is on a pedestal. But we are working on other things as well. Other people we're looking to get on, and this train is going to keep rolling in terms of draft, and it's going to be happening after the draft as well, because we're going to look at getting people on to talk about the players that we do draft in the back end of this month. But fantastic, and thanks ever so much to Jordan for taking his time out of his busy schedule.
Yeah, massive thank you to Jordan for coming on. Like I said before the interview, it's such a busy time of year. It's a busy time of year for us, and we've got jobs and stuff like that. For him, it's just absolutely manic, I'm guessing. And for him to share some time with us to get on and talk draft and Giants football is absolutely amazing. So, like Shane said, there's a lot more draft content to come. We're back every week with our live shows and stuff, and additional podcasts here and there where we can. So looking forward to hearing from people what they think about the show. Get in touch with us and let us know what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, remember just to like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube. If you haven't, share it around. This is quite a big one for us, so it'll be nice to get as many eyes on it as possible. And you can also hit the bell to be notified when we are live on YouTube. If you aren't already, follow us at the socials in the description, including going to our Etsy shop. My thanks, as ever, go to Jordan, to Shane, and to Kev for joining me, and to all of you watching or listening. We are signing off. Until next time, let's go Giants.